You don't need money to buy a home. And I'll prove it by showing you the exact strategy that I used to buy my own house in 2024 during some of the worst prices and interest rates that we've ever seen, with almost no money out of pocket. Now, most people think you need tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars stacked up in your bank account before you even start thinking of home ownership. And because of this myth, they're stuck renting forever while watching home prices climb higher and higher every single month. But what real estate agents and lenders don't want you to know about is there is an extremely specific strategy using FHA loans, seller credits, and strategic negotiations that can get you a home for practically nothing. And in this video, I'm going to break down the exact step-by-step system I used to buy my home with zero money down, including two of the easiest loans to make this possible, and the seller credit strategy that covers all of your closing costs. So by the end, you'll see that you don't need to be rich to buy a home. You just need to know the rules and how to play them right. Let's start with the biggest myth out there. You need a lot of money to buy your first house. And that's just not true. You just need enough money originally to cover your down payment and the closing costs. But even those can be reduced or covered entirely if you structure your deal right. Most people think 20% is required because that's the old school way and that's probably what your parents are telling you. But if you're a first-time home buyer, which most of you probably are, then you qualify for programs that can bring it down to 3.5% down for FHA loans, which is government-backed loans, or 3% for conventional loans. And conventional loans are the loan that your mom and dad probably have. That means if you're buying a house that is $300,000, your down payment could be as low as $9,000. And where things take a turn is that we're not paying the $9,000 either. We're going to make the seller cover it legally. This is how I've helped people and how I personally buy homes with almost no cash down out of pocket. It all comes down to seller credits. A seller credit is when the seller agrees to pay part or all of your closing costs. Think of it as a built-in discount that shows up at the closing table. So this was not commonly used prior to 2022, but since interest rates rose, the market has slowly shifted to allow some flexibility for buyers to negotiate. And here's what most people don't realize. FHA loans allow up to 6% in seller credits. Conventional loans usually allow 2 to 3%. Now that's already a huge amount, but here is the catch. Even if your loan, let's say, maxes you out at 3%, you can still get around it, and here is how. So let's say your closing costs are $9,000, pretty standard closing costs, but your lender only allows a 2% credit. That's $6,000. Now, what about the remaining $3K? How do you make the seller cover it? Well, you can ask them to directly pay for specific things outside of the loan. For example, your home inspection, that's usually $600 of the dollars. Your appraisal fee, that's usually $750 of it. They can even pay repair quotes because, I mean, every house needs a little bit of repairs. It's either gonna be done by you or the seller, so just ask the seller. So that remaining $3,000 can legally come from those side payments. So you've just saved yourself the entire closing cost bill. So the end result is buying your first home with pretty much zero in closing costs and only really paying that 3% down instead. What you can even do is if the sellers are already saying, no, it's a great price, we're not gonna give you a 3% seller credit, then just offer, $5,000 more, $10,000 more above asking price and then ask for the credit. Because at the end of the day, they're going to be paid the full amount regardless. It is you that is getting the loan. I've seen people walk into their closing appointments with less than $1,000. Now you might be wondering, okay, closing costs are covered, but what about that 3% down? Well, I've seen people walk into their closing appointments with less than $1,000 in hand, and I will explain exactly how, so stick around. And if you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, this strategy makes sense and I think I can do it myself, then you need to be inside of my free school community. There are over 1,300 people in there learning this exact same playbook. How to buy your first property, how to structure your first loan, and how to start investing without massive savings accounts. I go live every single week, break down real deals, and answer every question. It is completely free and you can join through the link in the description. All right, now let's talk about the next piece of the puzzle, credit and income, because this is where a lot of people either win or completely lose. The best loan in the world won't help you if your credit's not ready. So here's exactly what you need. For FHA, the minimum score is 580, but if you want a better interest rate, you should aim for at least the mid sixes. And for conventional, the minimum score is 700, but ideally you're going at least 720 to 740 for the best terms possible. When I personally bought my home, I was at above a 750 score because I started building credit early. I opened a credit card when I first turned 18. I used it very responsibly. I set up auto pay, had zero missed payments, nothing in collections, and I only really used about 5% or less of the credit limit. But even if you are starting late, it's still not too late. Just a few months of on-time payments on a secured card or credit builder type of loan, that can jump your score up fast. And the key is this, the lenders don't care about how much you've spent. They care about how responsible with your credit you are. Next, let's talk about income because this part trips so many people up. Most banks are going to tell you that you need 2 years of work history to qualify for any loan. And that's true most of the time, but not always. If you just graduated and got a job in the field that you studied, then you can actually use your college degree as proof of income history. And that is exactly what I did. So I just graduated, right? I had a signed offer letter for a software engineering job, and my lender approved me just using that. So I didn't have any W-2 income at all. So if you've got a degree or certification that directly ties to your new job, then you can qualify right away. And if you don't, you still have two options. You can either get a cosigner like a parent or spouse, or you can use dual income if you live with someone else buying with you. The lender just wants to see that the mortgage will get paid. Show them that and you're good. So let's put this into perspective. So let's say you're buying a home that is $300,000 with an FHA loan. Your down payment is 3.5% or $10,500. Your closing costs will be roughly 3% or $9,000. So that is $19,500 in total. Now let's use our strategy. You ask for 3% in seller credits. That's $9,000 off right there. Then you negotiate for your seller to cover your inspection, repairs, appraisal fees. Let's say that's another $1,000 to $1,500. So your upfront cost of $19.5K now drops to $8,000 to $9,000. And where it gets even better is if you get your realtor license and represent yourself as an agent like I did, then you can collect up to a 3% buyer's commission on average, which cancels out your down payment completely. And by the way, this commission is paid by the seller. So that means you're walking away paying almost nothing and own a home that builds equity from day one. Now, let's say you don't want to get your realtor license. Let's talk about how you can truly get in with $0 out of pocket, even if you have to front that 3% down at first. Here is the play. So you're going to buy a home using an FHA or conventional loan. So put down that 3%, 3.5%, and then get the seller to cover closing costs like I previously mentioned. Then find a property that needs light rehab. I'm talking just cosmetic stuff, right? Paint, flooring, new fixtures, landscaping, maybe a kitchen touch-up, nothing really major, especially nothing you would need a permit for. Then you're going to add value, right? That $5,000 to $10,000 of improvements that you can probably just rehab yourself will easily raise your home value by 25, 35, 40K, especially if you buy slightly under market value. And then after 6 months, 12 months, really whenever you want past that point, you can refinance, as long as your lender approves it. And when you refinance, your lender will base your new loan on the current appraised value of this spick and span shiny house after your renovations. They're not going to base it on your original purchase price. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you bought a house for $300,000, right? It definitely needed some work. You redid the kitchen, put some LVP down, got rid of that ratty carpet, and put in new paint. $30,000 in upgrades. A lender reappraises it because you're doing a refinance and they see, oh, we think this is worth $420,000 because, oh man, the house down the street is spick and span new and yours looks exactly like it. And that one sold for $420. So that must mean yours also should be worth $420. You personally are all in $39,000, right? $9K from the original down payment, $30K rehab, which you could get using a HELOC loan or even a private money loan or business credit. Then you refinance at 80% loan to value, so you can cash out up to $336,000, which is 80% of $420. So your original loan is $290. So that difference of $46K covers your original down payment and the repair costs, putting all of the cash back into your pocket. And now, on top of that, you have 20% equity in the house, which will probably lower your monthly payment by like $500. So you essentially got into the real estate game for a $0 long-term investment. And that is how you play the game. Use leverage, add value, then pull your money back out. It is the same principle investors use with rental properties, except you're just applying it to your first home. Now that you know how to actually buy your first home, even when you think you can't afford it, the next step is learning how to turn that home into an asset that makes you consistent income. Because once you've got that first property, you can start scaling into rentals and build the kind of portfolio that actually makes you financially free. So watch this next video on screen where I show you exactly how I went from $0 to a $1.9 million real estate portfolio using the same foundation that you just learned here. As always, I'm Joseph Khateri. Have a nice day.